It's the Behind the Shade show.
Speaking about feminine guilt, what are then some of the dangers that women will face when they try to find their belonging, but they end up in the wrong crowd?
Yeah. Well, this is where it's possible to get into cycles of abuse. It's possible to be taken advantage of in this way because look, let's look at what's happening here. And again, I'm not calling anybody out. I have done this. This is something that happens to everyone. There's no bad, there's no blame. Let's just name the behaviors, and once we're aware of it, obviously, then we can change it. We can alter it if we want to. So, what's happening when we're practicing feminine guilt as a woman, if we are trying to be pleasing and accommodating and bending over backwards and smiling even through pain for those around us, just to be needed, just to be wanted, just to be to avoid disappointment, what we're doing is we're abandoning ourselves and we are unboundaried. When we don't have boundaries, when a human doesn't have boundaries, they will be taken advantage of. That unboundaried human will experience resentment of others. They will want to protect themselves from connection, and in doing so, they will be disconnected from others. And disconnection is the deepest source of apathy, depression, anxiety, pain. Disconnection can actually cause death. And we've seen that in psychological studies, and these studies are you can't do these studies anymore. So back in the 70s, when studies like this could be done, we used monkeys and we had baby monkeys, one in a room with its actual mother, one in a room with a stuffed mother, and one in a room with a wireframe mother. The one in the room with the mother did fine. Psychological, emotional adjustment, no problem. Healthy development. The stuffed mother, the monkey with the stuffed mother, developed such psychological derangement, it had to be put down because there was no interaction or connection, even though the mother was soft. The monkey with the wireframe mother died on its own because of the lack of connection. That's how biologically and psychologically imperative it is for us to be connected to others. It's actually a part of our well being on every level. So I hope that that point drives home that underlying desire for a woman in this self protection mode, in this unboundaried mode, performing this sense of trying to be pleasing to others, suffering from this feminine guilt, the deep desire is for connection. The way it's being gone about is not healthy. What we want instead is connection through healthy boundaries, people who actually opt in to honoring and cherishing those boundaries, which keep us safe and provide a safe connection to those who actually care and have big, big hearts and are able to love.
I've seen one woman specifically struggle with that, and she always felt alone and she needed people around her,
Hmm.
even though she would say that she's an introvert, but she wanted people around her. The
Sure.
problem that she was experiencing was the people around her weren't lifting her up, they were draining her.
Right.
And one of the things that she began to realize was, terrain, if I set boundaries, I'm going to be alone. And the pain and maybe the anticipation of loneliness was too much for her to bear in comparison to be around people that were draining her of her feminine energy. Do women struggle with that
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah, this is a really common problem, and here this is going to be one of those times where we're going to explain the problem, but there's no shame here. Okay, so all listeners who identify with the conditions you've just set, get ready. Um, it is very true that women have created and been a part of cycles of overgiving. We are enculturated into this idea that we have to give of ourselves and continue to give even when we're depleted, that we have to do everything for ourselves and everyone else at all times in order to be wanted and to belong. And so we are drained by those around us who expect and take and consume. But this is a two-sided coin to some extent. A woman who is locked into this kind of behavior pattern will feel unwanted if she is not being drained, if she is not with people who drain her. So it is a bit of a chicken or the egg question. Number one, I'm a huge fan of heavy curation. I encourage the women that I work with to curate their lives, their worlds, their families, their relationships heavily so that they support the boundaries that these women want to have in place. Okay. When a woman is unboundaried, giving herself away, abandoning her own needs, it will feel like isolation and rejection when she pulls back. Okay. People around her will be used to her giving herself away. They'll be used to that pattern of behavior, and there will be a shakeup if and when she decides to stop. Okay. There will be a shakeup. And one of the things that I do, and perhaps you do it as well in your work, most strongly in my one on one coaching with women is support them through those shakeups. Because it's one thing to talk about the boundaries you'd like to establish, and it's another thing to hold them. And if you've never held those boundaries before and you're not practiced at it, the easiest thing to do will be to collapse and go back to being drained and overgiving and just, fine, I will pick up your socks and continue to do your laundry. Okay? It's a brave move to stop. But what you do when you create those boundaries is you actually teach the world how they can treat you. And those who aren't able to rise up into that healthier mode of being, to actually provide support, to no longer drain you, to stop taking from you, to step up into that position of support, that position of generosity, that position, which honestly is their highest version of themselves, right? We're calling everyone in to the healthiest version of themselves when we hold our boundaries. Some will rise to that challenge and others won't. And part of the shakeup is holding our boundaries strongly enough, knowing what is right and true and good for us enough, that we will either witness the rise of those who will step up and be okay with those who can't. That's where the support comes in. When I said earlier, women really can't exit cycles of abuse without support and help, this is what I mean. There is so much expectation, and there's going to be so much dysregulation in the woman's own body around this patterned behavior that in order to change it, she's going to need a support network. And that's where people like you and the work that you do come in, and hopefully as well people like me and the work that I do come in.
I like to give the example when it comes to loneliness and someone's feeling alone when they're making a change is think of a canvas. The canvas, the brush, and the paint, they're by themselves. But
Mm,
someone, to your point, the support, brings them all together to create the masterpiece. And I think sometimes we're missing the paint, we're missing the brush.
yeah.
Maybe we don't even have the canvas, but that's where women like you, that's where men like me come into play. But one of the obstacles that I see that women who've been abused in some way, they'll turn around and say, "What, Trin? What if I'm not worthy of the type of life that you're helping me paint?" Is that
Mm.
a concern for women to find their worthiness, or take it a step further, their value in the new them, in the new life?
Yeah, I got a little pang in my heart just there. And I'm also going to steal your painting metaphor, by the way. That's a really good one. I'll give you credit. Don't you worry about it. That's beautiful. And look, I think unworthiness is a human problem. I think men experience that too on a deep, deep level. I think unworthiness for all of us in this, look, this culture, this patriarchal culture that we live in, it doesn't actually serve anyone. It doesn't serve the healthy masculine. It doesn't serve the healthy feminine. It's distorted in its ideals. And yes, it centers masculine qualities, but not in a fabulous way. Not in a way that really serves the healthy masculine either. So we are all in our own ways walking around with a little bit of distortion, misunderstandings of what health and our place in this world is. And I think everyone on some level struggles with unworthiness. So I don't want to name it solely as a female or a feminine problem, But feminine unworthiness, historically for us, and again, as I mentioned, is encoded with danger. It's dangerous. If we're not worthy of belonging, we might actually die. And so that creates, I think, an even deeper level of fear and unhealthy attachment to people who may not be ready for a healthy attachment. So I think it just, one of the things I remember having an experience with a person I was dating who was a very privileged man by nature of being born white and male um, in the UK. The most sort of privileged central possible. And I'm not calling anyone out. And I love the UK, and this man was a beautiful man. But he was very surprised to hear one day when I expressed fear of walking down the street in a certain outfit. I said I didn't want to meet him at this location because the event we were going to required me to really dress up in an outfit I felt great in and fabulous in. But I knew walking out my door, I was living in New York City at the time, to meet him at this event would create the kind of attraction that was unwanted and worrisome for me as a woman. And he said to me, "Why would you feel at all fearful of walking? You live in a nice neighborhood. We're going to a nice event. You're a strong, capable woman." He really didn't understand the level of fear and protection that women exist in every single day. So I think that when we talk about a woman's sense of unworthiness, there's going to be just that extra kind of twist, that extra care, that extra consideration we need to place on it. But I do think everyone suffers from it.
Would that then play into, since you mentioned it, their attachment style, if they're the one that's avoidant and they're going to avoid examples of a healthy relationship because of their past and because of their unworthiness feeling?
I think even anxious attachment styles will I think healthy attachment requires healthy people, right? I mean just blanket everybody. Some of these problems are masculine and feminine specific, yes. And sometimes we experience them slightly differently. And I think some issues are just human issues, right? Everybody wants love. That's a human issue. Everyone wants their needs met. That's a human issue. Everyone benefits from healthy attachment. And everyone is capable of healthy attachment. And I do want to demystify a little bit these attachment styles because they've become almost pop culture these days. We're all talking about them, but they're not fixed. So the listener listening, if you've identified yourself as being one attachment style or another, it's a sliding scale. If you get into a relationship with a different kind of partner, you will likely shift into a different kind of attachment style. A person with a very typically healthy attachment style, if they get into a relationship with someone who has relied deeply on codependence for most of their life, you'll watch yourself alter your attachment style too. So these are just how we adjust and adapt to the relationships we're in. And what I would say really is important about any relationship that we're in is number one, nothing triggers us more deeply than our intimate relationships. And number two, our relationships are going to be the illuminating ground of the darkness we need to mine. So, whatever is within us that needs to be most healed, resolved, tended to at the time, the relationship that we're in is going to be illuminating that. Now, what I hope is that we'll take that opportunity, which is likely going to feel like a giant pain in the rear or deeply uncomfortable or sometimes even scary, and recognize that these triggers are potent potential healers. And if our person is qualified to hold that space, all the better. If they are mildly qualified or willing, let's take it. Let's get more paintbrushes, paints, and canvases for this moment. Let's call in our supportive allies because we need them. None of us can do this alone. We were not built for that. and utilize these challenges to create resolution, because that level of self development, interpersonal development, relational development, creates health all around and can develop healthy attachments and relationships and create really beautiful connections in the kinds of relationships that all of us, I think, desire.